this is the answer key to the polynomials test review. So problem number 1, we need to write a system of inequalities that matches the following graph. So we're going to look at the linear equation first, the linear inequality first. That's that straight line. So for the linear, we look at M and we look at B. There's B. And so it says that's -3. So the B is -3. The slope, we go from there, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1. So it's x minus 3. So I put a y. The shading for that linear is above it, so it's going to be greater than, and it's equal to it because it's a solid line. So y is greater than or equal to x minus 3. For the quadratic, you need to use your calculator. So you're going to put in the vertex, which is that top point, and a point on the right and a point on the left. So I'm going to use those two. So it looks like 1, 2, and -1, 2. And then the vertex is 0, 3. So I'm going to go to my calculator, and you do stat, edit. In L1, I'm going to put my x's. So -1, 0, and 1. In L2, I put my y's. So 2, 3, and 2. Then do stat and over to calc, and you're going to do quadratic regression, number 5. So A is -1 and C is 3. So that means it's y (x squared plus 3). Now the shading for the quadratic is below it, so it's a less than, and it's solid, so it's or equal to. And there is your system. For number 2, you're going to look at each of those places where it crosses the x-axis. So the x-axis, it crosses at -2. So as a factor, that really means x plus 2. Then we look at what it does at that point. At that point, it touches. Because it touches, that means the multiplicity has to be an even number. Has to be an even number. So that's going to be x plus 2 squared, because 2 is an even number. This 0, that root, that solution, that x-intercept, remember they all mean the same thing, is 0. That means the factor there is x. At that point, it flattens out. The graph flattens out. When it flattens, that means the multiplicity is an odd number, but not 1. So we're going to make this be x cubed. At this point, at that root, x is 1, so that means the factor is x minus 1. And it crosses through it. It doesn't touch or flatten, it just crosses through. So that means the multiplicity is exactly 1. So this is x cubed, x plus 2 squared, x minus 1. We could write out all the x's. We could write out 3 x's. We could write out 2 of those and then the 1 of that. But it's quicker to write it with the x. Factored form means you write out the factors, not standard form. You don't have to do all the multiplying work. The other problems I'm going to do on my own paper. So problem number 3, p cubed minus 2p plus 2p cubed. We need to write that in standard form, classify it by degree and the number of terms. When we do standard form, we also combine like terms. So p cubed plus 2p cubed makes 3p cubed minus 2p. That's standard form. To name it, something to the third power is called cubic. Then there are 2 terms. So this is a cubic binomial. So 3p cubed minus 2p is the standard form. Cubic binomial is the classifying. Number 4. 3 minus 5x to the 4th. To write in standard form, we're going to switch that order. -5x to the 4th plus 3. That's standard form. To name it, something to the 4th power is called quartic, kind of like a quarter. And again, there's two terms, so it's a quartic binomial. Number 5, x minus x cubed minus x to the 5th. Standard form, I need to rearrange that, so negative x to the 5th minus x to the 3rd plus x. That's standard form. So this is to the 5th power. To the 5th power is called quintic. There's 3 terms, so it's called a quintic trinomial. Number 6, f of x equals 1/2 x to the 4th minus 2. And we have to find the end behavior. For end behavior, you look at that first term when it's written in standard form. So it's this 1/2 x to the 4th. 1/2 is a positive number. X to the 4th is an even. So for positive and even, you refer back to x squared. X squared is a parent function that you know. X squared is a parabola that opens up, so both arms are up. So 1/2 x to the 4th is the same thing. Its ends are up and up. The middle part of x to the 4th is different, but the ends are the same as that x squared. So it's an up and up. You can either write up and up, you can put the 2 arrows. If you want to try to sketch the graph like we did in class, you could do that. Remember, we don't know what the middle looks like, and we don't care on this. We just care about those ends being the same. So number 7, same kind of problem. Y equals negative 1/2 x cubed plus 4x squared plus x minus 1. That first term determines the end behavior. So this is a negative and then x cubed. So x cubed is an odd. Think x cubed. You know positive x cubed from when we did parent functions. It looks like that. It's a down and an up. So a negative x cubed is the reverse. It's an up and a down. So up and down. And when we write end behavior, we write it from left to right. So that up is on the left and that down is the right side. Okay. Number 8. G of x. Now, there's a problem with number 8. Number 8 is not written in standard form, so we have to rewrite it in standard form. So it's negative x cubed plus x plus 5. And we look at that first term. Negative x cubed is a negative and an odd. So it's just like number 7. It's going to be an up and a down. All end behavior can be referred back to quadratic and cubic, to that parabola and to that kind of S-shaped graph. All evens are like a parabola, either opening up or opening down. All odds are like that quadratic, or like the cubic, I mean. So you need to know those two for sure, and everything else refers back to those two. Number 9, we have to write each polynomial function in factored form. Then we have to list the zeros, the multiplicity, and sketch a graph. So number 9, f of x equals x cubed minus x squared minus 12x. We have to start by factoring this. So when I look at that, I can see that there's a greatest common factor of x. So x parentheses, x squared minus x minus 12, and we're going to put equals 0. Now we have to factor that x squared minus x minus 12. To do that, what are two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add up to negative 1? Remember, my father drives a red Mustang. 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. Two numbers that multiply and add would be negative 4 and 3. Divide by 1 and make our factors. So it's x minus 4, x plus 3 equals 0. Then you put each one of those equal to 0. So x equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0, so x equals 4. X plus 3 equals 0, so x equals negative 3. Now, multiplicity is the number of times that factor occurs. This x, it only occurs once. X minus 4 only occurs once. x plus 3 only occurs once. Now, when we do graphing, we need to know that multiplicity because it'll tell us how to do the graph, whether it crosses, touches, or flattens. For a multiplicity of 1, it crosses. So all 3 of them are going to cross. In order to graph, the next thing you need to know is end behavior. So you have to know the roots, the multiplicity, what it's going to do in the end behavior. So I abbreviate end behavior with EB. Look back up here at standard form. It's x to the third. Think about x to the third. It's a down and an up. So when I sketch my graph, I put a point at -3, a point at 0, and a point at 4. Now I'm going to do my end behavior next. My end behavior on the left goes down, so I'm going to draw it going down. My end behavior on the right goes up. Now I can fill in the middle parts. At x equals -3, we said the multiplicity was 1, which means it crosses, so it's going to go through there. At 0, we said the multiplicity was 1, so it crosses, so it's going to come back down through there and cross. At the 4, it crosses again, so I have to come back up through it. That's how you figure out what your graph looks like. Do the ends, and then work your way left to right, whether it crosses, touches, or flattens. Number 10, g of x equals 4 minus x squared. So I need to factor this, and then do my end behavior and my multiplicity and graph. So I'm going to first factor out a -1 so that that has a positive x squared. When I do that, that makes it easier to factor. And equals 0. I can get rid of the -1 and factor x squared minus 4. X squared minus 4 will factor into x minus 4 and x plus 4, not 4. Factors into x plus 2 and x minus 2. Sorry about that. Equals 0. Put them each equal to 0. So x equals -2 and x equals positive 2. What's the multiplicity? Well, that only appears once, so the multiplicity is 1. What's the multiplicity? 1, because it only appears once. When the multiplicity is 1, it means it crosses. So they both cross. End behavior, that's that EB. Go back to the beginning when it was in standard form. Negative x cubed is a down and a down. Because it's a negative, it's a down and a down. So when I sketch my graph, I'm going to put a point at -2 and a point at +2. Then I'm going to draw the down and the down. What has to happen at -2? We said it crosses, so it has to cross through. What has to happen at 2 has to cross through, so it looks like that. So when we look at number 11, y equals x cubed times x plus 2 to the 4th, that's already written in factored form for us. We don't have to do the factoring. But we do need to take each one and put it equal to 0. So x equals 0, and the multiplicity is 3, because x cubed means x, there's 3 of them. X plus 2 equals 0, so x equals -2, and the multiplicity is 4, because that's the exponent. When the multiplicity is 3, that's an odd number. So odd means that it flattens. Even means that it touches. So at x equals 0, it's going to flatten out. At x equals -2, it's going to touch. Now we need to talk about end behavior. End behavior, you have to refer back to standard form. Now, I don't want to write all that out in standard form. But if you look at this x plus 2 to the 4th, it would be x plus 2, x plus 2, x plus 2, x plus 2. So x times x times x times x would be x to the 4th, times x cubed would make x to the 7th. X to the 7th is similar to x to the 3rd, which is a down and an up. So let's do our end behavior. So at the negative 2, I'm going to put it down. At the 0, I'm going to put it up. Now, at negative 2, I'm going to work left to right. When x is negative 2, it says it touches. So that means I have to bounce back down. At the 0, it says it's got to flatten out. So it's going to come up here and look kind of like that. So that it touches and flattens. Remember, flattens is kind of more horizontally, and crosses is more vertically. So the next section, number 12, says write a polynomial function in standard form with the given zeros. So number 12, we're given negative 3, negative 2, 0, and 2. Negative 3 really means x plus 3. Negative 2 really means x plus 2. 0 really means x, and 2 really means x minus 2. So I'm going to do these two at a time. I'm going to start with those two. X plus 3 times x plus 2 is x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 6. So x squared plus 5x plus 6. Then I'm going to do these two. Those two, when I multiply, makes x squared minus 2x. Now I'm going to take those two answers and multiply those. Because to me, that's easier than trying to multiply those two, then times the x, then times that. So when I distribute x squared times x squared, x to the 4th, x squared times negative 2x is negative 2x cubed. 5x times x squared is plus 5x cubed. 5x times negative 2 is negative 10x squared. 6 times x squared is plus 6x squared. 6 times negative 2x is negative 12x. Now I have to put that in standard form, which means put your like terms together. So x to the 4th. That makes plus 3x cubed. That makes negative 4x squared. And that makes the minus 12x. That stays there. And that's your final answer. So we'll do number 13 the same way. Number 13 is 1, 1, and 2. Well, 1 is x minus 1. 1 is x minus 1. And 2 is x minus 2. So we'll do the same thing. We'll do those first two, and then go on and multiply that answer. So x minus 1 times x minus 1, x squared minus 1x minus 1x plus 1, so x squared minus 2x plus 1. And then that times x minus 2. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times negative 2, negative 2x squared. Negative 2x times x is negative 4x squared. Negative 2x times negative 2 is plus 4x. 1 times x is 1x. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And then like terms. So x cubed minus 6x squared plus 5x minus 2. So number 14, negative 3, 0, 0, and 1. Negative 3 really means x plus 3. 0 really means x. 0 really means x. And 1 means x minus 1. On this one, x and x, I'm going to make that be x squared right away. I'm going to take that x squared times the x plus 3 so that I get x cubed plus 3x squared. Then I'm going to take that times x minus 1. So x cubed times x makes x to the 4th. X cubed times negative 1 is negative x cubed. 3x squared times x is plus 3x cubed. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x squared. So x to the 4th plus 2x cubed minus 3x squared. The next section is long division. So on number 15, it's x minus 2 into x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2x minus 4. When we do long division, we look at the first terms. X and x cubed makes x squared. X squared times negative 2 is negative 2x squared. X squared times x is x cubed. Minus sign, parentheses, change, change, change. So you get 5x squared. Bring down the negative 2x and do it again. X times what is 5x squared? 5x. Multiply negative 10x, 5x squared, parentheses, minus sign, change, 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 and you get 8x minus 4. X times what is 8x? 8. 8 times those, negative 16, 8x, minus sign, parentheses, change, 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 and you get 12. At this point, you're done doing all the work. You have to write your answer. So it's x squared plus 5x plus 8 plus 12 over x minus 2. Number 16, x minus 3 into x cubed minus 4x squared minus 3x plus 18. One of the things you have to remember when you do synthetic dividing and long division is if you're missing a term, you have to make sure you fill in those holes with zeros. We don't have any missing terms, so we're good. X and x cubed, x times what's x cubed? X squared. So when we multiply, you get negative 3x squared and x cubed. Parentheses, minus sign, change, 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 and you get negative 1x squared. Bring down the negative 3x. X times what's negative 1x squared? Minus 1x. And I put the 1 there this time. I don't always. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Negative 1x times negative 3 is positive 3x. Negative 1x times x is negative 1x squared. Minus sign, parentheses, change, change, change. We get negative 6x plus 18. X times what's negative 6x? Negative 6. So then we get negative 6x plus 18. Minus sign, parentheses, change, 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 and nothing is left. So your answer is x squared minus 1x minus 6. So what does that tell us about x minus 3? It tells us that x minus 3 is a factor. It is a factor because that remainder is 0. Now it didn't ask you to do that on your review, but you should still know that.